I promise this is the last time I'm going to open up the show with this, but for one last time, let's just soak this in for a second. Because I've got some really good news to get to on today's episode, but it was so great to watch the Eagles dismantle, disarm, and completely neutralize the Chiefs' offense and the Chiefs' defense. And I really think that there might be some lingering effects after this, because this was not just a close loss and it came down to a Jake Elliott 53-yard field goal and he made it. He's the hero, and wow, tough loss for KC, but they'll be back, which they probably will, but also they had some things exposed in this game, and I feel like they're just uninterrupted runs to the AFC Championship game every single year might not be there in 2025 after the ass kicking the Eagles put on in New Orleans. So if you're still bathing in those Chiefs tears, maybe you work with a Chiefs fan, you're friends with one, he's in your group chat or something like that, hit the like button. Let's get, 400 likes for 40 points by the Eagles on Kansas City. Now, I want to get to some of the good news I have for you all today, starting with this. The Saints are hiring Kellen Moore, the Eagles' offensive coordinator. What does that have to do with Denver? Well, in the offseason, I'm going to challenge you guys to always think 2 steps ahead of, okay, this happens. How could this have a trickle-down effect to the Broncos? Here's how. Darren Rizzi, who was maybe the second person in the line for the Saints head coaching gig after being the interim head coach. Darren Rizzi, you are a Bronco. I think he is absolutely going to come over to Denver now and be Sean Payton's new special teams coordinator since he is not returning to New Orleans. I doubt Kellen Moore retains him. I don't think it would be a bad idea to retain him, but also, do you want to stick around for the team that passed on you to be the head coach? Probably not. So I think Rizzi is going to be named the Broncos special teams coordinator in a matter of days. They have to do an interview process, and I don't know if they've completed that, if they're Rooney Rule compliant, but they're going to get Rizzi as the next special teams coordinator. Some background on him: after being the Saints intern, going 3-5. Before then, he was the special teams coordinator under Sean Payton for a brief period of time from 2019 up until this past year. Before that, long-time Dolphins special teams coordinator. So plenty of experience at the job, and of course, he's got the connection to Sean Payton. What are the job requirements? I've got 2, Darren, so you don't even need a pen and paper for this. Just try to remember it. No blocked field goals. As crazy as it might sound, I think Ben Kotwika might have been fired because of the Alex Forsyth debacle in Kansas City, since it was on film for every week leading up to it and no adjustment was made. Payton felt like this man might just be a figurehead, but he's not actually making any adjustments, and that was one that should have been spotted a mile away because it popped up on film as early as week 1 in Seattle. So that's job number 1. Job number 2, maximize Marvin Mims. He is an all-pro special teamer for this team. He's a threat in punt and kick returns, so make the most of him. Do not let his talent go to waste. Under Darren Rizzi in New Orleans this past season, Saints special teams was one of the best units in football. Top 10 in punt return against, so opposing teams average 7.6 yards every single punt return going up against New Orleans. Kick returns, 26 yards. That was 6. And I thought this was very interesting. Field goals against, 8. Opposing kickers converted 78% of field goals. Maybe that's just a little bit of luck, or maybe there's a little bit of black magic on the Broncos sideline with Rizzi, since he seems to have the ability to just stare a kicker down and make him miss. So I'm fully on board with this hire, which I think is going to be just announced in a few days, if that, as the new special teams coordinator. He's done a great job in New Orleans and in Miami. He knows Sean Payton, and we know how important that is to Payton. So I expect him to be announced as the next special teams coordinator very, very soon. I will go as far to say, Rizzi, you are a Bronco. So that's the first piece of good news I have on today's episode. But at the end of the episode for the last couple of days, we've been doing a fun little game, which is name a random Broncos blank. Today I want to do it in the middle of the video, and in future episodes, always tune into the very end to see if you and I say the same random blank. The blank today is special teamer. So I've got someone in mind. I'm going to count down from 3, and let's see if you and I say the same name. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Trindon Holiday. It's a little basic, but it's also a deep-ish cut for how long ago it was. So Trindon Holiday is my random special teamer. Let me know if you said the same one down below. Another piece of good news that I think you guys will get a good kick out of. Maxx Crosby might be on the move. Ian Rapoport and Tom Pelissero from the Super Bowl highlighted a couple other pass rushers who could follow Myles Garrett's footsteps and request a trade and get moved. And here's what they said about the Broncos' record. Crosby has said before he wants to be a Raider for life and has been loyal to the organization. He also has been open about his frustrations with the team's seamless endless string of changes and mounting losses. Crosby wants to win and be a big reason behind this success. Trading Crosby for a bounty of picks would be one way to expedite that process, particularly if it's to a playoff team where he knows people. So there doesn't seem to be a ton of momentum behind Crosby getting dealt, which is why my gut tells me he's probably going to stay. I think what likely happened here is Pelissero and Rapoport were like, okay, since Garrett requested a trade, what's the next domino to fall? And they came up with names like Crosby, Micah Parsons, and Trey Hendrickson. None of those names were actually backed by, hey, we're hearing from really good sources that they are close to requesting a trade, are considering it, or the team themselves are considering a trade without even asking the player. But if you had to put a gun to my head and say, is Crosby a Raider in 2025? My gut tells me yes, although we've seen in the NFL and in sports in general, once Luka got dealt, it was kind of a, all bets are off when it comes to this kind of stuff. Expect the unexpected. And if Crosby got traded, that'd be fantastic because we can just admit he's been an absolute menace to the Broncos since stepping foot in the Sin City, and I would love to see him very, very far away from the AFC West. Before we get to our final piece of good news, I do want to give a big shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players. Basketball season is heating up, and Prize Picks is the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. They also put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Let me give you an example of what Prize Picks selections look like. I'm taking the Moore on some cricket. This guy from Sri Lanka, an absolute monster. So give me the Moore on whatever that is. I also like the Moore on some darts. I like darts, not to the level of like people in the UK, but why not take the Moore on whatever 2 180s is? And then finally, Connor McDavid. I'm taking the Moore on him for the upcoming tournament. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Download the Prize Picks app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Let's get into our third piece of good news that I came across today, which is Field Yates put out a first-round mock draft, and I was, as you guys were, very curious to see who he had going to the Broncos at number 20. I think this is a piece of good news. He thinks Ashton Jeanty could fall all the way to 20 when the Broncos are selecting. So, let's discuss the possibility of Jeanty being there at 20, because this seems to be a major divide in Broncos country. You have people that want to take Jeanty, and then you have people who just say, there's no world where Jeanty falls to 20. You guys are high on crack cocaine for thinking this. Waste of my time. I think that's a bit of an overreaction. I think we should know by now that the NFL draft is a crapshoot. So please, remove this "he won't be there" from your vocabulary. You and I do not have a crystal ball. Last year, we didn't see a single defender go off the board until 15. That was an NFL first. This is a product filled with so much unknown. So the idea that just Jeanty, it cannot be there at 20, there's a 0% chance, tells me you've never been a part of an NFL draft before. Now, I'll give you that when it comes to guys like Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. They're not going to be there at 20. I've spent zero time talking about them. But Jeanty, he can't be there at 20. When I continually see him in mock drafts, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but it's got more than a 0.100% chance of happening. Here's what Field Yates had to say. It was hard to go 19 picks without Jeanty coming off the board. He's one of my 5 highest ranked prospects in the class. But he also plays the deepest position in this draft, and one on which many teams philosophically are not inclined to use a premium pick. But this would be a dream scenario for the Broncos. The overarching question we have to ask is, does Sean Payton really intend to use a premium pick on a running back? You go back to his time in New Orleans, it was a running back by committee approach. Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. But he never used a first-round draft pick on a running back like Ashton Jeanty. And maybe someone like Jeanty is just so good and such a great prospect that it makes the coach change the way they do things because they can't live without that player. So I sure hope that it's smoke and mirrors when it comes to Payton saying, yeah, we probably are going to go with a committee approach and not a bell cow back, as he put it after the season. Last year, he took a lot of pride in making everyone think that they were going to go with J.J. McCarthy, which he said after the draft. Hopefully that's the same thing here, and people think, all right, well, we can remove Denver from the Jeanty, wish list or Jeanty followers. Payton said already they're not going with him. And then, surprise, surprise, he makes a move for a man who has just been so fun to watch, especially, of course, last season when he really broke out and emerged on the scene. 2,600 yards. Guy had 29 touchdowns. Now, there are 4 players who are currently at the top of my list of dream, realistic draft targets. And here's where they all went in this Field Yates mock. Tyler Warren went 14th overall to the Indianapolis Colts. Walter Nolan, who I thought might be like a plan C, plan D if Warren and Jeanty are gone, he went 3 spots before Denver to the Bengals at 17. Then Jeanty to the Broncos at 20, and Colston Loveland 2 spots later to Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. So, we'll wrap up the video with this question here. Who do you want to select at 20? Those are my top 4 guys. That list might expand, might change throughout the pre-draft process, but early February right now, those are the top 4 guys. We don't need that next part here, Moose. So, those are, like I was saying, the top 4 guys, but I do want to hear from you. Who do you want to select at pick number